made to you so special? Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn!
Were you scared of it? No, not at all, huh?
Nope, I'm from Brooklyn.
You're from Brooklyn, huh?
Okay guys, Frank Style, just a guy from Brooklyn, and I'm here to bring you my top 30 70s movies ranked. I want to get right to it, so therefore let's go through my 2 rules. Rule number 1 is spoilers. These movies are really old, so therefore I'm giving you a hard spoiler warning. Rule number 2 is, as always, this is a favorites list, not a best list. Therefore, if you want to come back at me, show me your list in the comments section. Kicking things off at number 30 is Animal House. Came out in 1978. The granddaddy of the frat boy movies stands the test of time with legend John Belushi, may he rest in peace. It's got the laughs, some great musical numbers, a toga party that you're never going to forget, and a young, I'm talking baby-faced Kevin Bacon. And yeah, it's got all the raunchiness you could only achieve in the 70s. Coming in at number 29 is Saturday Night Fever, came out in 1977, which transports you to 1970s Bay Ridge, Brooklyn at the height of the disco craze. John Travolta had such a presence even in these early years. But I'm calling a flag on his first play, as I've never seen a Brooklynite sandwich 2 slices of pizza together. Speaking of food, the real highlight was White Castle Sliders, as there was a location on 92nd Street which no longer exists. Anyone who's eaten them will tell you it's a gift and a curse, as they taste oh so good going down, but can be equally rough coming out. But obviously it's the dancing that everyone else watches this for, and if you're a fan of disco, it totally delivers. If you're into dance movies, I did a huge ranking covering all the greats. Coming in at number 28 is Ralph Bakshi's The Lord of the Rings, came out in 1978. For those of you under the impression that New Line and Peter Jackson were the first to bring Tolkien's work to the big screen, Bakshi did it 30 years prior in animated form. This covered the majority of the first 2 books, condensed into 2 hours, and for a 70s cartoon, it was quite stunning. Bakshi used all the techniques at his disposal, with his main one being rotoscoping, a very tedious effect that gives the animation a realistic look. But the movie didn't do the books justice like Jackson eventually did. They were simply limited by the technology of that time. Fans waited for Bakshi to finish the story, but instead, The Return of the King was done by a different, less competent animator. It felt more like a cheap Saturday morning cartoon next to Bakshi's epic cinematic production. Coming in at number 27 is Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, came out in 1977. We go from rotoscoping to stop motion, which was hugely popular in the 70s and 80s. Roy Harryhausen was the master of this effect, and with its tale of Sinbad going on a quest to cure a prince under a terrible curse, I couldn't get enough of all the different creatures ranging from demons to giant walruses. The story is similar to that of an RPG video game, with Sinbad's party traveling to different areas to collect items or knowledge to achieve their goal. Coming in at number 26 is Shivers, came out in 1975, a Canadian science fiction horror movie by legend David Cronenberg. As you follow a doctor living in a posh apartment complex with slug-like parasites on the loose attacking all the tenants, and those who become hosts turn into erotically obsessed maniacs. It plays out in a very zombie-like way, but with more debauchery. It's twisted and icky and totally goes for it. Thank you, Canada, for giving us horny zombies. Coming in at number 25 is Suspiria. Came out in 1977. An Italian supernatural horror movie directed by Dario Argento, which stars Jessica Harper as an American ballet student who transfers to a prestigious European dance academy. But she realizes after a series of murders that the academy is a front for a coven of witches. What really stands out off the bat is the rich, vibrant colors that you're going to see everywhere. You add a killer score from Goblin that's probably going to be playing in the back of your head for the rest of the day, and of course, all the Italian horror bells and whistles. Coming in at number 24 is Blazing Saddles, came out in 1974. Mel Brooks gives us a Western parody for the ages. It's as politically incorrect as can be, but people often miss the point. You're following a town of complete idiots being terrorized by even bigger villain idiots. Luckily, Sheriff Bart and the Waco Kid are off to the rescue. With a loaded cast of Cleavon Little, Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, and Harvey Korman, the laughs don't stop. But my favorite will always be Brooks himself, playing the governor who absolutely does not have a clue.
Just sign right here, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, help me in with this. Help me in with this. Help me in with this.
Think of your secretary.
That was a very good suggestion.
Coming in at number 23 is The Sentinel. Came out in 1977. A young model looking to get some space from her boyfriend moves into a historic Brooklyn brownstone, which she got at a surprisingly great price. She gets to know her neighbors, some of which are really out there, but after trouble sleeping and seeing visions, she complains to her realtor only to find out that the building is vacant, other than a priest on the top floor. It's creepy with some great scares and a hell of an ending, pun intended. Oh, and if you're a cat lover, there's a cat that goes to all the parties. So if you want to see the party cat, check it out. Coming in at number 22 is Damien. The Omen came out in 1978. Vastly inferior to the original, but still offering a lot of fun. You follow a now teenage Damien living with his uncle's family and going to military school. He's becoming aware of who he is and secretly guided by followers of his cause. Conversely, there are a few trying to convince his uncle to pick up where his brother left off. The inclusion of a blackbird being the bringer and observer of death is a really nice touch. And the deaths are absolutely fantastic. My favorite being one involving an elevator. Coming in at number 21 is Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, came out in 1972. A prequel of sorts to the original Apes timeline. In a lot of ways, this is what the new Caesar trilogy is based on. In the future, a plague kills all cats and dogs, so humans turn to apes to be their pets. But when they discover that apes can accomplish so many tasks, humans begin to use them as slaves. But unbeknownst to them, Caesar, the child of the time-traveling apes Cornelius and Zira, is hiding amongst them. He teaches them to plot and plan for an eventual apes takeover. And if you're a fan of the Planet of the Apes franchise, I did a full ranking of all the movies. Coming in at number 20 is King Kong, came out in 1976. King Kong has been remade over and over again, but this is the Kong that I grew up with, so it'll always be my favorite Kong. It sports a very young Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange. It's a little bit more grounded, with Skull Island not having any dinosaurs, but Kong does do battle with a giant snake, which I'll admit is pretty corny. But we gotta talk about the gorilla in the room, in that just like the movie Jaws, they built a huge mechanical Kong, which was supposed to be in most of the movie. And just like Jaws, the frickin' thing didn't work. So they scrambled and got effects master Rick Baker to design a very convincing ape suit. But let's face it, it's a guy in an ape suit. Lang played the damsel in distress with grace and dignity.
They were showing this film that I refused to watch. And that's why I was up on deck by myself when the yacht exploded. Did you ever meet anyone before whose life was saved by Deep Throat?
Okay, well, it's not like she was doing bestiality or anything. The way I see it, all these strange choices give the movie a ton of charm. It has an epic score, making the movie feel bigger than it really is, and the ending with him being shot down was bloody as hell. Coming in at number 19 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, came out in 1974. One of a handful of movies that led to the slasher craze of the 80s. But do not misunderstand, it is not a slasher because it has more of a family aspect to it, which makes it unique. A group of young people heading to a farmhouse end up having to make a detour and discover a group of crazed murderous outcasts. As the group is attacked by the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface, they must do everything they can to survive. All of the sets and designs have an interesting aesthetic to them, and I gotta be honest, I love the way this movie is shot. Sometimes camera angles are everything. Coming in at number 18 is Salem's Lot. Came out in 1979. We go from crazy people to vampires in an adaptation of a Stephen King novel of the same name. When Arthur Ben Mears comes back to his childhood home in search for some inspiration for his next book, he discovers that the townspeople are mysteriously turning into blood-sucking vampires. This scene where a young vampire boy floating outside his friend's window asking to be invited in haunted my dreams as a child. As the town's numbers begin to fade, Ben and a few others must discover the lair of the master vampire before it's too late. If you're a fan of vampire flicks, I did a huge ranking of all the greats. Coming in at number 17 is The Manitou, came out in 1978. My 70s schlock choice, released the same year as Halloween, and starring Jamie Lee's dear old dad, Tony Curtis. It's absolutely bonkers, and it's the craziest movie you've never heard of. A lady with a growth on her back the doctors are having trouble to diagnose asks her psychic ex-boyfriend for help after a surgeon tries to remove it, and the lump causes him to attack himself. After a seance, they learn that the growth is a reincarnation of a 400-year-old demonic Native American spirit looking to destroy the world as we know it. It just continues to get exponentially crazier, and at the climax, you're thinking the only thing left is a battle in outer space. Does that happen? You're damn straight it does, and with boobs. God, I love the 70s. Coming in at number 16 is Time After Time, came out in 1979. H.G. Wells, played by Malcolm McDowell, has built a time machine, but Jack the Ripper, played by David Warner, is on the run from the police, and he uses it to escape to the year 1979. Wells follows and enlists a bank teller named Amy, played by Mary Steenburgen, to catch Jack before he continues his killing spree. It's got that great fish out of water comedy.
Give me a Big Mac, an order of fries, and a small Coke to go, please.
Give me a Big Mac, fries, and tea to go, please.
Mixed with that dark Ripper suspense. And in a lot of ways, it's a time capsule for 1970s San Francisco. Steenburgen would continue her time travel shenanigans in Back to the Future 3. Coming in at number 15 is Halloween, came out in 1978. Piggybacking off Texas Chainsaw and Black Christmas, John Carpenter gives us the story of a little boy who on Halloween night stabs his older sister to death. Why? It's a mystery that only adds to the story. Many years later, a grown Michael Myers escapes the mental institution and wreaks havoc on a group of teenagers while simultaneously is being hunted by his exposition-laying psychiatrist armed with only a trench coat, a handgun, and a decently cropped goatee. Of all the babysitters targeted, Laurie Strode, played by young Jamie Lee Curtis, would use her wits to evade Michael. This is a slasher with kills to be sure, but it was less about blood and gore and more about suspense, atmosphere, and that creep factor. The Carpenter score was everything in pushing these themes. Coming in at number 14 is The Exorcist, came out in 1973. Regarded by many as the greatest horror movie of all time, it supposedly sent moviegoers vomiting and passing out in theaters. When young Reagan starts acting odd, levitating and speaking in tongues, her worried mother seeks medical help, only to hit a dead end. A local priest, however, thinks the girl may be seized by the devil. He makes a request to perform an exorcism, and the church sends an expert to assist with the difficult job. In my younger years, I found it to be more funny, mostly because of Reagan's profanity and sticking crosses, well, in places they should not go. After many rewatches, I see the complexities, and the movie is more about making the viewer uncomfortable and unsettled. It's a masterpiece and the reason why there's always a few possession films released every year. Coming in at number 13 is The Five Deadly Venoms, came out in 1978. A Shaw Brothers classic involving a martial arts pupil who aims to follow his master's dying wish, to find the new identities of his 5 previous pupils and kill them if they've turned to evil. The 5 are the Centipede, whose maneuvers are so fast it's like he has 100 limbs, the Snake, whose head and tail strikes are deadly with pinpoint accuracy, Scorpion, whose kicks are as deadly as a scorpion stinger, with hands resembling its pincers, Lizard, a fan favorite who can walk on walls in true lizard fashion, and finally the Toad, whose impenetrable skin makes him invulnerable to any strike. The movie is quite dark, and there's also a sort of mafia element as well. The pupil eventually teams up with the good members to defeat the bad ones in a glorious battle ending. If you're a fan of Shaw Brothers movies, I did a full ranking as well. Coming in at number 12 is Rocky, came out in 1976. Greatest sports movie, greatest underdog movie, the movie that turned struggling actor Sylvester Stallone from sometimes homeless person to bona fide action legend. It's more grounded and grittier than later installments, with Rocky not being so lovable here. But where you get that genuine love is his courtship of the super shy Adrian, while at the same time he's given a title shot by the overconfident champion Apollo Creed, perfectly played by Carl Weathers. The movie was based on the real-life Muhammad Ali-Chuck Wepner fight, and Rocky's entire goal was not to win, but go the distance, which is exactly what this movie did. The score is legendary and something people still listen to when hitting the gym. The ending fight is powerful, which is ironic as Stallone hired a professional boxer to do the choreography, but he later fired him and did it all himself. Coming in at number 11 is Rocky 2, came out in 1979. I've always preferred Rocky 2 to the original. The love story is still there, and we get a continuation of that. But I'm watching these movies for the training montages and the pugilism. Rocky is less rough around the edges and more of a lovable simpleton. Burgess Meredith, who plays Mickey, takes a larger role, especially with Rocky's training. Having him chase chickens and learn to fight right-handed is absolutely genius. Rocky's run through Philly is more epic, with kids running with him, and his battle with Apollo more drawn out this time. And I'm pretty sure I'm not spoiling anything at this point, but yeah, Rocky wins this time. Coming in at number 10 is Jaws 2, came out in 1978. The impossibility of equaling Jaws was apparent. And with movies like Texas Chainsaw, Black Christmas, and Halloween starting something, the answer was simple. Have the shark stalk horny teenagers. There was also an added bonus with Roy Scheider returning against his will. He was so pissed, all that anger transferred into a passionate performance. Unlike the original, you see the shark a lot more, which is a blessing and a curse. There's also some silliness with the shark taking on a helicopter. Whether you're a fan of the Jaws sequels or not, I did a huge video defending all of the Jaws sequels. It's actually really fun. Coming in at number 9 is The Warriors, came out in 1979. A New York City street gang must travel 30 miles from the north end of the Bronx to their home turf of Coney Island after they are framed for the murder of a respected gang leader. It's a strange combination of the gritty streets of 70s New York City and cheesy gangs that range from gangs in three-piece suits to mime gangs in baseball uniforms. But even more iconic are the famous catchphrases like,
Can you dig it?
Warriors, come out to play.
You warriors are good. Real good. The best.
Coming in at number 8 is Carrie, came out in 1976. Nothing screams 70s more than Carrie with his bell-bottom pants, big hair, and full frontal nudity intro. The story's supposed to be a metaphor for womanhood, and I do see that, but growing up collecting Marvel Comics, all I could really see was a horror version of an X-Man Jean Grey origin story. She pretty much goes Dark Phoenix at prom, and it's glorious to say the least. You get Sissy Spacek, John Travolta, and the greatest American hero himself, William Katt. My favorite moment that always makes me chuckle, Carrie takes out her crazy-ass mom by sending every sharp object in the kitchen her way. The lady was already over the top as it is, but here she's positively writhing in ecstasy. Coming in at number 7 is Enter the Dragon, came out in 1973. In the 70s, Bruce Lee was larger than life. He was having trouble breaking into Hollywood despite him training a lot of its A-listers. So he began making movies overseas and Hollywood took notice. The title is spot on with him finally getting top billing with John Saxon and Jim Kelly. In this revenge spy martial arts classic, where Lee infiltrates the criminal organization led by Mr. Han by competing in his tournament, which has combatants from all over the world. Coming in at number 6 is The Omen, came out in 1976. Growing up forced to go to Sunday school every week and hearing about a movie about the son of the devil scared me to no ends. After finally watching it as a teenager, it was better than I ever imagined. There was a mystery as to whether or not little Damien was even aware of who he is and what was the source causing all these deaths. Was it Damien? Was it the dog? Was it the devil himself? It hits me even harder now as a parent because you feel Thorne's conflict. How could you murder a child that you raised? And with daggers, no less. I am such a fan, I even love the remake. Yup, I'm the one. Coming in at number 5 is The Godfather Part 2, came out in 1974. And I totally concede that Godfather 2 is superior to the original. It's more complex, it's half sequel, half prequel, and there's a duality to Michael, who's absolutely ruthless now that he's established himself in Nevada. And his father, young Vito, escaping to New York, and you see his origin story as he grows to power. There's so many powerful scenes, the kiss of death scene in Cuba, him forgiving his brother Fredo at his mother's wedding, and that moment where he gives the signal for his brother to be executed. But I've always preferred the OG Godfather, so it sits here at spot 4. A more simpler story with the Corleone family scrambling to deal with Vito's assassination attempt because he refused to get involved with narcotics. You get to know all the family members quickly, and it sets up everything perfectly, not just for the finale, but events in part 2 as well.
Fredo, you're my older brother, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. Ever.
There's also a lot of funny, odd moments, like after Vito getting shot, Fredo sits over him and starts yelling, "Baba!" And the fight between Connie and her new husband, screaming out, "Bafangoyo!" But the best thing about all the Godfather movies is, in the end, everybody gets theirs. Coming in at number 3 is Alien, came out in 1979. Truckers in space are sent by their company to investigate a mysterious beacon. After exploring an alien ship, one of them is violated by a face-hugging creature. And, well, you know the rest. You have H.R. Giger's genitalic imagery, the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped on the Nostromo, and being stalked by the perfect organism, which has acid for blood. It only gets worse with the betrayal of a crew member and the realization that the company is all about getting that organism. Crew expendable. It's so before its time that the only 70s reference I could spot is Sigourney Weaver's hip hugger panties. And my runner-up in number 2 is Star Wars, came out in 1977. George Lucas changed the game with his space opera about a farm boy who gets persuaded by his crazy uncle, who might actually be in a cult, to go on an adventure and take on the Yankees. The evil empire, led by a man so powerful he can choke people out with his thoughts. And it's painfully obvious to everyone that he's clearly an asthmatic. Their mission is to return a pair of droids to a spunky princess who's rocking that sexy Cinnabon's hairstyle. This movie is so big that the toy company Kenner sold empty boxes, basically with IOUs in them, during Christmas because the toys weren't ready. And it didn't even matter. Those mofos sold out like hotcakes. And my number 1 70s movie is Jaws, came out in 1975. The original summer blockbuster that made people think twice about swimming in the ocean just happens to be my favorite movie of all time. It transcends both horror and adventure. It's movie making at its best, as Jaws is in a lot of ways a happy accident. Bruce, the mechanical shark named after Steven Spielberg's lawyer, kept breaking down because of the seawater. So Spielberg had to come up with other ways of showing the shark killing people without actually showing the shark. The intro scene with the teenage girl getting tossed around like a julienne salad is downright terrifying, which lets the audience know exactly what they're in for. But here's the rub, guys. The shark isn't the villain here. It's just a force of nature. It's the mayor, this ugly suit-wearing piece of shit, who decides to serve up an all-you-can-eat buffet of victims so that the town can make its seasonal profits. In the end, it's up to a New York cop who's afraid of the water, a yuppie marine biologist, and a fisherman with a Spanish lady fetish to get into a little boat, grab their cojones, and take on the above-average great white shark, who pretty much toys with them in this big dick contest at open sea. The moments are epic. The little boy that gets gobbled up in front of an entire beach, the famous Indianapolis story, Quint's big demise, and of course, his last stand against the shark. I'm not one to use the word masterpiece lightly, but this definitely fits the description. On the BK from the city that never sleeps.
See my face
Peace,
in
baby.
lights on my name on marquees found down on Broadway. Even if it ain't what it seems, I got a pocket full of dreams, baby. I'm from New York.